With the Pro model coming in with a $199 price tag, I think this is one of the best little retro slash streaming handhelds on the market right now. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and this is one that I've been super excited about due to the new CPU they opted to use in this handheld. And, I've actually had it in my possession for a few days, and this thing is putting out some absolutely amazing performance. So they are offering a bunch of different color variants. I went with the watermelon version. That's kind of my favorite that they've come up with since the Pocket Flip, and yeah, I do think it still looks really good here on the Pocket 4 Pro. And keep in mind, Retroid is offering two different variants of the new Pocket 4. They've got the regular Pocket 4 with the Dimensity 900 CPU, and what we're going to be taking a look at in this video is the 4 Pro with the Dimensity 1100, which is definitely going to put out better performance than the 900. If I can get my hands on the non-Pro version, I will do kind of a comparison video, but for now, we've got this one, and again, this thing is a great performer. Okay, so first things first, love the form factor, and they kept with the same form factor of the Retroid Pocket 3 and the 3 Plus, a very portable system with a 5000 milliamp hour battery. We do have analog triggers around back here, so you've got that linear press to it, works out really well for racing games. And up front, they did opt to use Hall-based analog sticks, so we don't have to worry about drift or anything like that. Now, one thing I was worried about when going into this was the D-pad. I'm not a huge fan of D-pads that use dome switches. I personally love a conductive pad. Unfortunately, they went with dome switches here, but the roll on it does feel really nice, has a little bit of give, and we will be doing some testing in this video. But the first thing I wanted to do was just give you an overall look at the unit itself. Now down here at the bottom, we do have dual stereo speakers. These can get quite loud, but at 100% volume, they do get a bit tinny. So I've been sticking around 80%, and I don't even need it that loud. It's just kind of when I was filming, I had it up all the way when I was emulating some PSP. Noticed that it did get a bit kind of harsh on the ear at 100%. But other than that, down here we do get a 3.5mm audio jack for plugging in some headphones, micro SD card slot, and USB Type-C for charging the internal battery. Up top, we've got our power button, volume rocker, and a micro HDMI output. So we can plug this into a larger display, and since this is utilizing a 16:9 aspect ratio display, when you plug this into a TV, you're going to get a full screen experience out of it. Unfortunately, there's no desktop mode to make it kind of a better experience, but it does 1080p out, and it looks really good. Now, again, we've got our D-pad here with dome switches, Hall-based analog sticks, and as you can see, these are the smaller sticks like you'd find in the Switch. Some people aren't into them, but since they're Hall-based, we don't have to worry about any kind of stick drift, and they're really accurate. I'd say the main claim to fame for the new Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is the CPU they're using. We've got the MediaTek Dimensity 1100. This is an 8-core SoC, 4 A78 cores at 2.6 GHz, and 4 A55 cores at 2 GHz. This is not a new chip by any means. We've actually seen a couple other handhelds on the market with the Dimensity 1100, but unfortunately those have been really hard to get your hands on, and the pricing has kind of been all over the place. With this, the Pro model is coming in at $199, and the lower end Retroid Pocket 4 with the Dimensity 900 is $149. With the more powerful CPU, we also get a more powerful GPU. This is using the Mali G77 MC9 at 836 MHz. We've got 8 gigabytes of LPDDR4X RAM, 128 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage built in, plus we can add a micro SD card. It's got a 4.7-inch 16:9 60 Hz display at 750 by 1334 and up to 500 nits of brightness, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, micro HDMI output, USB Type-C, 5000 milliamp hour battery, and this is running Android 13 with OTA updates directly from Retroid. The very first thing we're going to be taking a look at are some benchmarks, and we're going to be facing this off against the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, just to see if it would be worth the upgrade. Remember, the Pocket 3 Plus had the Unisoc T618 CPU, and with this one, we did have to use Geekbench 5 instead of Geekbench 6. On the Pocket 3 Plus, single core 383, multi 1442, and of course, the Pocket 4 Pro with the Dimensity 1100 blew it out of the water, single core 829, multi 3142. When it comes to 3D Mark, we did have to run Slingshot on the older T618 CPU, and with that, we scored a 2,247, and as you can see on the new Pocket 4 Pro with that Dimensity 1100, it's maxed out, but I still wanted to give you an idea here. Using the Wildlife Extreme benchmark, we scored a 1,263. Unfortunately, this is one of those benchmarks that just won't run on the Unisoc T618. And finally, we've got the Antutu benchmark. On the Pocket 3 Plus, we scored a 231,681. On the new Pocket 4 Pro, 727,387. And if you take a look down the list at the individual scores, you can see that it is absolutely decimating the Unisoc T618 in all of the tests. So yeah, we've got a significantly more powerful handheld here by quite a bit, and the performance really does show that. We will get into a lot of testing very shortly, but I wanted to give you a quick overview of everything we have built in here with the operating system. Okay, so I wanted to move in a bit closer so we could get a better look at everything. And overall, I mean, this is a very smooth operating system running Android 13. Got a pretty powerful chip here, given that we've got a smaller handheld. Pulling down from the top, we've got all of our quick actions, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, airplane mode, alarm, all that normal stuff. But we've also got some stuff tailored specifically for this handheld, like our performance menu here. So we've got standard, performance, and high performance. Now in high performance, this is automatically going to set our fan to sport, but you can go to smart if you want to. And I've done some thermal testing here in high performance mode with the fan on. This thing will not thermal throttle. We'll take a look at that in just a little bit. This one right here, force landscape mode, does come in really handy for a lot of different applications on Android. Glad that it's here. Obviously, we can go to our battery saver if we want to, but moving into the official Android settings, we've actually got a dedicated section here also, known as handheld settings. From power saving, we can actually clean the RAM once this goes into standby, and we can set a background process limit. So basically on all of my Android devices, I do 3 to 4. I'm just going to leave it at the standard limit here because I haven't run into any issues. Connect to TV. You can have this in mirror mode, or you can totally disable the screen on the handheld itself. No auto sleep, and of course, force landscape. You definitely want that when you're connected to a larger display. USB, status bar, input, controller style. You can set this up so the face buttons are going to act like an Xbox. Retro is going to be more of a Switch style. Personally, I like having it set up like this. We've also got an L2 and R2 mode. This does have analog triggers. You can set this up as analog, digital, or both. I just leave it on analog. Works pretty good here. Tested a lot of racing games. Virtual mouse. Enabling this will allow us to use mouse on screen with the built-in analog stick. And I just set up a hotkey, so I'm just using my shoulder buttons. If I hold it for 3 seconds, no matter where I am, it's going to disable that for me automatically. Google services, and we've got our advanced mode. So, going through this, there's actually a lot of great stuff here tailored towards this little handheld. And I think that Retroid has done a really good job with their custom Android builds for their Pocket devices. I wanted to jump into a little bit of gameplay to give you a look at the extra settings we have here to help out with our games. Obviously, playing Minecraft here, it's going to run on this chip really well. Swiping over from the right-hand side is going to bring up our menu. From the top, key adapter. Now, this is really awesome for games like Genshin Impact and others that don't officially support controllers on Android. Basically, we can set this up any way we'd like, and we can place these buttons anywhere on screen. So for instance, this is going to be my left analog stick. This is going to be my right analog stick. Now, Minecraft does officially support a controller, so I really don't need to set this up. But I wanted to give you a look here because there's still a lot of great Android games that don't support controllers. And since we've got it built in here to the handheld itself, it makes it really easy to kind of map those. Now, one thing you will run into is kind of using the right analog stick as camera movement. Just double tap on that right analog stick that you placed on screen. And from here, virtual joystick mode, directional skill mode, adjust view mode. Now, this is what I use for Genshin Impact on my right analog stick. You can set the sensitivity, and you may need to adjust this to your liking. But what they've done here with the built-in key mapper is really awesome. I mean, there's a lot of settings that we can use here. It just makes it really easy to set up these on-screen controls. Tapping speed up will clear those background processes, which is going to release some RAM that's been cached. We've got a record button here, so we've got a built-in screen recorder. We can go up to 1080p with it. Personally, I don't like using the built-in recorder. We've got HDMI here, so it's pretty easy to plug into a larger display or even a capture device. At the bottom, we've got our on-screen FPS counter, temperature, CPU usage, and memory. I'm going to enable that floating FPS monitor. Now we've got a real-time FPS counter so we can see how well our games are running. And for most of the Android games that I've tested, it actually does 60 FPS really well. Some of the higher end stuff, you may need to drop the settings down just a little bit, but it's definitely a really powerful little device, and I love the form factor of this new Pocket 4. Now, of course, we've got an Android device with stock Android UI, but we also have the Retroid launcher built in. Now, you could get by without even touching this if you wanted to. This is definitely built for emulation. This will allow us to import, categorize, and download box art for our games. Really easy to use. And I'll show you real quick. I've actually loaded up some games on an SD card. Got a 128 gigabyte card. As you can see, my NES section is not populated yet. So I'm going to go with the default SD card location. We'll hit scan. Now it's going to populate the games that I have on that SD card, and it's automatically going to download box art. Now with this, I did have a few boxes missing, and it's due to the name convention of the game I have. I just took some random stuff and threw it on here. But yeah, this is really great for kind of organizing everything. We can also set up our emulator parameters per system. But now I think it's time to test out some gaming on this device because that's what it's all about. We're going to start off here with some native Android gaming, then we'll move over to some emulation. And the first game we have here is Asphalt 9. It's another one of those games that does natively support controllers, so don't need to use any kind of mapping software. I'm at high quality from the settings, and as you can see, it's running really well. I really haven't run into any Android game that's not running at or really close to full speed on this device yet. Next, we've got Call of Duty Mobile, high settings, 60 FPS, and to my surprise, the built-in controls work natively with this game. Sometimes with these handhelds, you do have to use a key mapper because with this game itself, it only officially supports a few controllers, but I guess developers have kind of found a way around that. And luckily here, with the new Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, we've got controller support, so not an issue to play this one. But of course, with Genshin Impact on Android, we're still lacking official controller support, and that's where the built-in mapper comes in really handy. Right now, I've got this game at a low-medium mix, 60 FPS. You can see we've got a pretty steady frame rate here. That frame counter is in the middle of the screen there. And I'll tell you, once you set up the key mapper with this game, you will need to adjust the sensitivity to your liking. For me, the camera movement is definitely a bit fast, but you can actually get in there and just turn it way down if you need to. Now I think it's time to move over to some emulation because that's one of the big reasons somebody's going to pick up a device like this. And the first thing I wanted to test here was some Dreamcast, and while we're here, I figured we'd test out the D-pad. So here we have the Redream emulator. I'm upscaled to 1280 by 960, and I know we could go a bit higher with it, but with the screen's resolution, it looks great like this. D-pad itself isn't using conductive pads, it's using those dome switches, but the way they've set this up, it's actually got a really nice roll to it. One of the better dome switched D-pads on the market, in my opinion, that I've tested so far. It's not as tight as some others that I've tested, and I think they kind of found a nice little balance here with the way they have it set up. Actually been having a pretty good time playing fighting games with this, and of course, Dreamcast is going to run at full speed whether you want to use Redream or even the Flycast emulator. Moving over to some PSP using the PPSSPP emulator, 2x resolution, Vulkan backend, Chains of Olympus, running at a steady 60 FPS. Now, I was sure we were going to be able to get some really great PSP emulation out of this device. After all, we've got that MediaTek Dimensity 1100. And since this game is one of those that's harder to emulate on lower-end chipsets, we can upscale the easier-to-run stuff on this device just fine. There are some games we'll be able to go up to 5 and 7x on. In this video is Ether SX2 for some PS2 emulation. I'm at 2x resolution with Gran Turismo 4. OpenGL backend, seeing 60 FPS across the board, looking really good. Now one thing that kind of bugs me is the placement of the start and select on this. A lot of these games do require you to hit select to change the view, and getting down there while I'm holding the gas kind of doesn't work out sometimes. But if you do find yourself struggling with something like this, remember, you can always remap that button. Now another one I wanted to test here was God of War 2, and with this I did have to take it down to 1x resolution, still using that OpenGL backend. And with all of these games for PS2, I don't have any of the hacks on. You could still introduce a couple cycle skips if you wanted to, and it's going to lower that FPS, but you could get a smoother experience if you don't want this lower resolution. But with the smaller screen, I still think it looks pretty good here, and we're running at 60 with God of War 2 for PS2 on this $199 handheld gaming device. That's pretty awesome if you ask me. Another thing we have here with the Retroid Pocket 4 and the 4 Pro is Wi-Fi 6. So streaming your favorite games using something like Steam Link is going to work out amazingly. I've got this connected to my main gaming PC, pretty beefy system. I've got it set up so it's only going to do 60 FPS. Soon as I booted this up, all of the buttons worked. I didn't have to do any kind of remapping or anything like that. It just worked right out of the box, and if you've got a good router, then you're going to see some good performance out of Steam Link or Moonlight. One thing I always try to do with game streaming is make sure that the PC I'm streaming from has a wired connection. So my main gaming PC is plugged into Ethernet right now. We're just on Wi-Fi with this, obviously, but it does kind of alleviate, having two wireless signals there. Having my PC on Ethernet really helps out. Another thing I wanted to do with this device was just test the thermal performance. Now we do have that built-in cooling fan, and with my test, I have it in smart mode where at high performance. I just ran for about 11 minutes here. This is stressing out all 8 cores to 100%. I mean, that's as far as we can take it right now. The fan itself is a bit louder than I thought it would be, given that it's working with such a small blower style. It doesn't sound like a jet engine or anything like that, but you can definitely hear it. Now, jacking up your game's volume to around 50 to 60% does kind of drown that out. But in my 11-minute test in high performance mode with that fan set to smart, we didn't see any kind of major thermal throttling. So you can play this all day with your favorite games, and this is more of an extreme test because it's maxing out all 8 cores at 100%. While you're playing a game, you're not going to be putting the kind of load on the system that we're seeing here, and the maximum CPU temperature that I saw by the end of my run here was only 62 degrees Celsius, so we're well under thermal throttle. And when it comes to overall battery life, it's actually looking pretty good. Now it's going to depend on what you're doing with the device. For instance, I ran a demo of GBA just using RetroArch. Screen at 100% brightness. I got 5 hours and 54 minutes of runtime out of this. Now, with a stress test, maxing out all 8 cores to 100%, 2 hours and 9 minutes. So it's going to be all over the place depending on what you're doing, but mixed use, you're probably in the 4-hour range, which really isn't too bad. First impressions here for the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Love the form factor. They do offer a bunch of different color options. I kind of wish that we did have a conductive pad under this D-pad here, but with the dome switches and the way they have it, it does work. I can pull off my special moves, I can play my favorite platformers without missing a hit. We're also looking at some really decent battery life. Now, one thing I'd love to see changed here is just the fan profile they have. We've got the Smart and Sport, and even in Smart, it can get a bit loud. It's a little annoying if you've got the volume down, but like I mentioned, at about 50% volume playing a game, it's not too noticeable. It'd just be nice to be able to take that down a bit more because we're definitely not hitting thermal throttle with that thing maxed out. So yeah, I've been really enjoying the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and with a price tag of $199, it's kind of hard to beat this. Now there are more powerful Android-based handhelds out there, like the Odin 2, but that's coming in at around $332 for the base, and they're really hard to get your hands on, so this actually might be a great option for a lot of people out there. I've personally been having a lot of fun with this thing, and if you're interested in learning a little more, maybe picking one up, I'll leave some links in the description. And I will have another video coming up, so let me know what you want to see running on this device in the comments below. But that's it for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.